With almost 80 operators in Siege today, you'd think that Siege has every operator it would need, but they don't. So in today's video, I'll be telling you 7 more that Siege should also add into their game. The first operator I think Siege should add to the game is an operator with a flying drone. The closest thing we have to this right now is Echo, with his drones being able to jump up and stick to ceilings, but I want a drone that isn't limited to just jumping, something more. This operator would have 1, maybe 2 drones at most that they could fly wherever they wanted to, and there's 2 ways Ubisoft can implement this and it be balanced. The first way, my favorite way, being that they add a bulletproof shield on the face of a drone as a rework for Blackbeard. Now this isn't actually an Alka original idea. This is something that the Siege community has actually been wanting for a while. The reason this would be so good and why it's so common to want this is because it would give Blackbeard not only a viable rework, but it would also add something unique in the process. To balance this, it would need to be able to be destroyed with explosives like impact grenades or nitro cells, or at least have a canister on the back that you can shoot out like Ram and Mira. Having it also be able to have an idle mode would allow this flying drone device to be able to fly still, while your dead teammates could give you callouts on this drone and it not be active. It also needs to be countered by EMPs from bulletproof cameras or take increased damage from tasers like Maestro and Clash. With the addition of you being able to knife Mira and Maestro cameras as well, I think being able to knife this gadget to death is something fair also. In terms of weapons, I don't think the operator itself should have something too strong like the AK on Ace, but not too weak like the FMG9 on Nook. If it were a Blackbeard rework, they could just buff Blackbeard's AR and keep that, or they could add a new weapon entirely, keeping his good DMR as a secondary option. Keeping the Deagle as a secondary firearm would be good just for the character of Blackbeard as an operator. Finally, I think they should remove the EMPs on Blackbeard if Blackbeard were to get reworked, so that they can't just counter Blackbeard's only counters, like BPs, Maestro cams, Clash's shield, etc. Then, for a flying drone operator, there's the second option. Don't make it a Blackbeard rework, make it something different entirely, a new operator. If you want to differentiate, don't add the bulletproof shield in front of it. Because of the fragility of the gadget though, this operator should have 2 drones instead of 1. This drone can also move way faster and has more of a sleek design to it. Lore-wise, a droning operator like this would make sense. If you go to Lair, when you go there, you can see the countless number of flying drone cases in Armory to prove that drones are a huge part of the war going on in Siege as a story right now. These drones would need to be smaller, would need to be able to fit in hiding spots, being still counterable by Mutant Mozzie, but not by EMP devices if they're in idle mode. Speaking of, I still think they should have an idle mode where they float, but because of the fragile nature of the gadget not having a deployable shield on it, they should still make way less noise, like Echo drones in its prime when they would go invisible. Whichever way Ubisoft decides to go, I think a flying drone operator would not only be a fresh and realistic change of pace, but also something that perfectly fits with the lore. Something a bit more dramatic though would be our next defending operator, this operator's ability being a one-way barricade. This fake barricade would make it to where if you damaged it, the barricade would simply break immediately. Whether you meleeed it, shot through it, or destroyed it, by any other means it doesn't matter. This might seem weak, but hear me out. The way this ability would work is almost identical to a mirror window. You, the defender, would be able to clearly see any attacker that is on the other side of this barricade, but because it's a one-way mirror, they would just see a normal barricade, and it would be indistinguishable from a regular barricade. If you were able to bait an attacker into shooting it because they thought it was a normal barricade, you could use that opportunity to peek through it after the shot and get a free kill, because again, it only gets destroyed with a few bullets. To make this completely not just an overpowered version of Mira though, you wouldn't be able to use it on exterior barricades that lead directly outside. Only indoor windows, indoor archways, and indoor doors. Now, that nerf might make the gadget seem completely useless now, because everyone will know that a random barricade in the building will just be your barricade ability, but that's just the thing. What if it wasn't? You could in theory put down your 2 fake barricades, but put up 3 more real ones. Now, they don't know which is which, making your gadget able to surprise them much easier. Pairing this up with the observation blockers this operator will receive as a secondary gadget can make an even deadlier operator. Speaking of her loadout, she would have the 9mm C1 or the ability to run the Boss G for her primary options. She wouldn't bring a bailiff as that would make her a little bit too versatile, so I think the STB pistol would suit her just fine. Other than observation blockers, I think the other secondary gadget that would suit her well would be a bulletproof camera to stop her counters like Brava and Twitch, or to stop drones from finding out her real/fake barricades. This gadget would also be EMP countered. I think just like Castle, this operator might be bad in new players' hands, but with a good strategy in mind, can be situationally applied to complex strategies to make it overpowered. Something a bit less complex for newer players though would be this next attacker. This attacker would bring a tripwire, a great gadget for flank watch specifically. As this attacker, you would place down each end of the tripwire on any vertical surface, making your tripwire horizontal of course. Nothing diagonal, slanted, or curved to maintain the operator's balance, but also to prevent invisible, buggy, or uncounterable tripwires. The wire would be a thin black line, visible if you're looking for it, but not too obvious if the gadget is useless. If a defender finds himself ensnared in the trapwire by walking into it, one of the ends of the trapwire would come off of the wall and wrap around their leg, while the other end is anchoring them to the other wall that you attached it to. The defender that gets caught in this still has the option of just shooting you even if they're caught, just like if they were in a lesion mine, but they don't have the ability to move outside of the wire's radius when they're caught unless they get rid of it. If you wanted to counter this ability, all you would have to do is shoot one side of the trapwire, but smart players wouldn't place them in areas that could be shot, so a secondary way that you could counter this gadget is by knifing the wire on the ground. This would cut the wire, but make an audible sound cue, that way they know where you are, but you're free to leave or reposition. Other notable counters include explosions of any kind, mute jammers, or Caveira's silent step, which I think is a great idea because it would actually make Cav kind of viable. If hacked by a Mozzie's Brava drone, this can turn into a defender gadget, which is something that's a little noteworthy, but pretty situationally dependent. The loadout of this operator would include breaching charges as a secondary gadget. This would allow the operator to create even more doorways to ensnare opponents in. The other secondary gadget would be smoke grenades. This would allow you to set up snares on site with cover, or at least so people don't see the snare in general when you're setting it up or after you're setting up. The primary gun of this attacker would be Zero's SK or the Supernova shotgun. Secondarily, this operator has the option of a Gon 6 or the 5.7 USG pistol. In terms of how many snares this attacker would get, I think 3 is reasonable considering the raw power of the gadget, but also taking into consideration how easy it is to counter for most people, a glass cannon of sorts. Just like this next defender whose ability is a flash mine. Right now, as Ela stands, she's pretty terrible unless you're using her to counter shields, so there's 2 ways that this operator can go. This can either be a completely new operator, or it can be an Ela rework. The stun on Ela mine just don't disorient enemies enough for it to be powerful enough, but if the Ubisoft development team chose to rework Ela's mines to be flash mines, I think she could be viable. The way you would put down the gadget would be the exact same. You'd throw it down and it would still keep its extremely fast activation time. The reason maintaining the fast activation time is important is because that, mixed with the gadget being throwable, allows the gadget to be able to be used as a trap set in the prep phase, but also as something you could throw at the enemy on the fly. If you have 1 or even 2 of these in your pocket that you didn't set down, and you're on the roam and people are rushing you on the roam clear, having the ability to throw this at them to slow them down and save your life could be game-changing. If the activation time is too slow, this wouldn't work. In today's aggressive shield meta, I think this is actually extremely important. But like I said earlier, you could always just put these down wherever you wanted to in the prep phase as well. It's versatile in that manner. If we also wanted to make this gadget unique, we would want to make the flash last a bit longer than a regular flash, or even have some lingering effects like sound disorientation or increased light sensitivity that lingers for about 5 seconds after the flash wears off. If this is an Ela rework, the counters would remain the same and so are her loadout as well, so I won't get into that. But if Ubisoft decided to take the other route and make this its own separate operator, I think making some changes should be in order. Don't make this gadget throwable at all. This would make the operator more akin to anchoring, while also maintaining Ela as her own unique operator and not overshadowing her. If his ability is stationary, you would play her a lot more like Goyo, for example. Have 4, maybe 3 flash mines in total that you could place anywhere, while only flashing people that walk into its proximity a total of 2 times each. Any more, and I think the gadget would be very overpowered. Something that would make it a little bit less overpowered would be the gadget counters. This gadget's counters include any EMP device, Brava hacking the gadget and make it only flashing defenders, or a Twitch drone. It's not bulletproof, so shooting it works too, as well as explosives. This operator gadget responds to the proximity of operators' heat signatures, implying that it's electronic, so IQ would also be able to see it and counter it as well. Because it responds to heat signatures, it can't be countered by smokes or shields either, still activating against the majority of operators. The loadout of this operator would have the option of the AUG from Cade or the ITA shotgun. It would bring the SMG-12 or the option of the P1MM for secondary weapons as well. This operator for secondary gadgets would bring observation blockers and a nitro cell. Whether they take the Ela rework route or the route that I provided, I think flashes on defense are something that they need to experiment with regardless, and something that's completely undiscovered on the defender's side. Just like how they need to experiment with some sort of dog operator on attack. This is operator 4. Here's the thing though, Siege has already actually thought about this many times, but there is a massive issue that you have to consider when making a dog in a shooter game. Would you want to shoot and kill a dog in a game? Or if you had a kid, would you want them doing that and seeing that? Seems kind of messed up, right? If this was genuinely an issue though, they could make the dog robotic, but I actually have zero idea how that would work, so we don't know. If you put aside the issue with kids shooting dogs in a game, then let's get down to how the ability would work. First of all, this operator would spawn in with the dog behind them, beside them, or on their back. It doesn't really matter. Not doing anything until instructed to, though, being the key thing. If you've ever played Call of Duty Ghost, you might know where I'm about to go with this, but if not, strap in and hear me out. You could use a tablet connected to a tablet on the back of your dog to control it, similar to Dokubi's tablet. It sounds weird being able to control a dog with a tablet, but with this tablet being strapped to the dog's back, the tablet will be able to provide enough sensory inputs to the dog to be able to control it if you're looking for an explanation on how it would work realistically. If the dog was robotic, you wouldn't even need this explanation, but that's besides the point. You would be able to control this dog, and you'd have the ability to make it sprint and jump, like a fast, big drone almost. This dog would have HP just like an operator, a 3 speeds health to be exact because it is just a dog. Probably something like a Belgian Malinois or a Pit Bull, realistically. Not really, probably a fast dog like a Belgian Malinois. Your final command you could use with this dog is, of course, Bite. If you use the active ability button while controlling the dog would sprint at the nearest person, locking onto them if you were looking at them, and bite them. This would take away 50 to 75 HP, and until you're able to fight off the dog by holding down a button, the dog would immobilize you, kind of like a frost mat. If you were able to do this, you'd shove the dog off of you, giving you the chance to shoot it. If not, the dog would be stunned, and you'd be able to get up regardless. If not, the operator could shoot you while this dog is on you, and it's game over for you. This, in my opinion, would be excellent as a roam clear operator, especially if you have a team that can hold off angles and cut off angles if the defender decides to run away. This might sound overpowered, but like I said, this dog has HP, and not a lot of it, so if you're on a map with long corridors, this wouldn't actually be the ideal roam clear, especially compared to somebody like Jackal or Dokubi. But on other maps, an operator with a dog just might be broken. Now that we've gone over the ability, let's go over some counters. The first being bullets, obviously, but because this is a normal dog, there aren't many electronic things that can counter it. It will be destroyed with Goyo Fire, slowed by Turbo or killed by explosives as well. It could also get countered by trap operators since it is an actual organism like Kapkan, Legion, or Frost, even Thorn as well. The loadout on the actual operator though would be something hopefully weak to balance the operator out a little bit, because I'm thinking this operator might be a little overpowered. For one, I'm thinking Blackbeard's AR if they don't buff it, or the FBI shotgun for your primary options, with Ela's pistol as the secondary, just for fun. Flashes would be ideal for this operator, as well as claymores if you're actually on the drone and you don't want to get ran out on, so those would be the secondary gadgets for the operator. Overall, this operator, if done correctly, has the potential to be one of the strongest attackers in the game if done right, and maybe even borderline overpowered. Something else that might just be too overpowered would be a flame turret on defense. As a defender, you would get 2 flame turrets, which I know sounds crazy, but hear me out. These would have a great deal of HP, but a slow detection speed, kind of like a thorn trap, making it to where if no defenders are nearby to capitalize off of its detection, you can kind of just quick peek it and shoot it after multiple quick peeks, or just shoot it before it realizes you're there. It also will have a pretty limited range, around 5 to 6 meters, so you could also just utilize long angles on it as well to kill it without it even detecting you in the first place. Due to the fact that the activation is delayed and has limited range, it's best to use this gadget in corners near entrances to site, where you know attackers will have to funnel into. This is also advantageous because the attacker will have to pick between shooting you or the flame turret if you're anchoring, giving you a powerful win-win scenario as a defender, especially in the late round. The amount of damage this flame turret would do would be the same as standing in Goyo Fire, maybe even slightly more, considering there will be only 2 of them. Given the fact that these gadgets are electronic, they will have many counters like EMPs or Brava, but the gadget is also bulletproof, meaning it can't be destroyed by Twitch or bullets. If the gadget is destroyed, however, it will leave behind a pool of fire, similar to a Goyo Fire, just with slightly less range and only lasting around 8 to 10 seconds instead of 20. Given that you only have 2 of these, I think making it bulletproof with a secondary explosion mechanic is more than fair. Obviously, good players will want to utilize this detonation mechanic if they think it would be beneficial to them, so giving this operator a nitro cell, to me, would only be fitting. Now that we've said that though, let's just go right into the rest of the operator's loadout. He would bring either a nitro cell or impact grenades, with his primary being the choice between the Commando 9 or the suppressed MP5 that comes on Echo. For secondary options, this operator would bring the Super Shorty or the 1911 TAC Ops. I want to make the primary guns not too strong, but good for people with on-par recoil management to make this operator seem at least a little balanced. Now, giving the operator a Super Shorty as well as a secondary option would make him able to compete with other area denial operators like Goyo, Tachanka, or Smoke, considering all of them bring a way to set up the site as well. The option to make head holes also allows for turret lineup creativity. This is arguably the most realistic option on this list, but still one of my favorite made-up operators in general. But not quite my favorite, because I like to save the best things for last, with my final operator's gadget being a partial reinforcement operator. Now, this operator has the ability to be versatile with reinforcements, making some reinforced walls that they reinforce only half reinforced, kind of like making a half wall if you were to put Nizami at the bottom of a wall. Same concept there. You would still be behind a reinforcement, but you'd only reinforce the first bottom half of it and cut the animation off halfway to create insane site setups that would absolutely break and reshape the meta. Not only would you be able to create reinforcements only halfway up, but you'd also be able to create reinforcements halfway down too. You'd even be able to create reinforcements halfway from the left to the right, or the right to the left. Now, I will say, out of all of the operators on this list, this would be the hardest to balance, and this would be completely game-changing, to be honest with you. A way to balance this, though, would be to not let the reinforcements your teammates did be affected by your ability. So if they were to reinforce a wall, it's reinforced and you can't change it. Only what you reinforced can you change. Ubisoft could also implement a system where maybe only 3 of these walls can be changed, or 4 of them, or 2 of them, whatever it may be. Another way to make this viable is to make it something that goes away over time. This way, you can make crazy game-breaking setups, but they only last a minute into the round. Inherently, you want this operator to be a roamer. That way, you don't have people saving this broken ability for the last minute on site to abuse this. To make this operator a roamer, we're going to give it impact grenades or proximity alarms as the secondary gadget options. Make it a 1 armor, and give this operator the option of the M12 or a new operator specific SMG that's a bit weak, with the secondary being an M45. I think giving this operator any sort of destructive capability, whether it be a shotgun or a secondary shotgun, would make it way too versatile for its own good, which is why it only has SMGs as primary and secondary options. And a pistol as a secondary. If you're questioning why I'm trying so hard to balance and to nerf this operator, let's go into the counters of the operators. Hard breaching devices. That's it. That is the only thing that can counter this operator, because at the end of the day, these are all still reinforcements that we're talking about here, so we want to treat them as such. Otherwise, this operator might not be good at all, but if I'm not balancing it and nerfing it constantly, it might be the most overpowered thing Siege has seen yet. But with it out of the way, that was the 7 operators Siege should add. My name is Alko. Check out this next video, and I hope I'll see you there. Later.